everyone, I'm Dan from JazzComposersPresent.com, an online space where composers, musicians, and listeners come together to celebrate the music we love. I'm joined today by Lauren Elizabeth Baba, violinist, violist, and composer, director of the BABAorchestra, curator of the Big Band Nights music series in Los Angeles, who has written for the National Symphony Orchestra, among others. Lauren is here to show us creative approaches to writing for improvisers in the big band.
Hi, thank you for tuning into my mini lesson. We're going to be digging into my big band piece, Marigold, which is a 45-minute long-form suite written in 4 continuous movements. With a length like that, I was looking to push myself in a variety of compositional ways. I was looking to explore the relationship of through composition and improvisation, as well as how to thread them together seamlessly. So today I'm going to show you how I approach composing for soloists in a big band by figuring out how much to leave open or to control, as well as how and what to notate for the musicians. I approach improvisation and composition similarly, so while composing, I was imagining how a big band would improvise together if they were out in the wild without paper notation. As the conductor, I'm not necessarily leading, but I'm up there as an 18th player, making real-time decisions with the band. I also wanted to notate everything in a way that could be sight-read, so having the solo sections as clear as possible without frills. This piece embodies the emotional process behind the persistent drive to cultivate the freedom to create without fear. It's a narrative of perseverance to find peace and initiate growth by virtue of change and adversity. Therefore, each movement has a different emotional narrative, so the way the improvisation is written is reflective of that emotion. The first movement represents openness and questioning. Emotions are building throughout the movement. So this first example is the intro, where there is peace and openness. I wrote delicate and small fragments for the woodwinds, eventually instructing them to play at their choosing. The rhythm section has similar fragments, but with more open textural improv. I cue each section, as well as cueing the brass that has notated melody over top. Let's take a listen. This second example captures the building and release of emotions through a full band free improv. I wrote cells that I cue and instruct the players to transition into textural angular sounds until the entire band is playing free. Then I cue the rhythm section to start the build for the final release into the written material. Let's take a listen. The second movement represents the craziness and humor that comes from the ridiculousness of situations after they are realized and embodied. So this third example is a through composed trombone section solo. There's trading between all 4 players, but it's all written out. But because of the backgrounds and the odd number phrases, it feels more improvisatory. It captures the bouncing back and forth of thoughts that can build in your head. So let's take a listen. The third movement represents the drive and persistent force that comes when change is needed. The third movement solos are long formed and really intertwined into the composition, so we're going to skip that movement for now. Moving on to the fourth movement, that represents the collapse and the frustrated, filled emotions, which inevitably leads back to questioning and openness once that emotion passes. So this fourth example is a double alto solo built out of very geometric and harsh melodies. The rhythm section is waiting for my cue to continue on and is the big release of the huge build of the entire suite. So let's take a listen. fifth and final example is the transition back into tranquility. This is another heavily conductive section. The woodwinds are instructed to transition into textural angular sounds, and the rhythm section into more washy and less accented textures. There are melodic cues in the brass, which finally blossom into a more freely interpreted section based off of those melodic fragments. Then it finally fades out into the vibe, which takes place at the beginning of the piece, connecting the suite into its conceived loop. So let's take a listen. Thank you so much for joining me for my mini lesson, and I hope this inspired you to find other ways to write for soloists and big band. Happy composing, and thanks again.
Thanks for watching today's mini lesson. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Drop any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos down below. To watch our full-length events and participate in live Q&As with our presenting artists, head to jazzcomposerspresent.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.